It's been yet another heavy week of horrible news in most of the world. And so I think our discussion today is really timely. So if y'all will just bear with me for just a moment while I get my script up here, and I'm going to get this party started. So hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us at Secular AZ today. We are a nonprofit organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. We have some incredible programming, including our Friday updates from all kinds of amazing speakers. We have historians, authors, elected officials, journalists, activists. Next Friday, we will be speaking with two doctors, Dr. Kaveh Najafi, who is a trauma surgeon in Arizona, and Dr. Marie Terrell, and they're both with Arizonans for gun safety, trying to get common sense gun measures put into law in the state of Arizona. So you don't want to miss that. And I believe we may have one more in the series about guns and the Christian rights obsession with guns. And so you can always take a look on our calendar to find out what our next topic of discussion will be. And also, if you're interested in getting more involved with our organization, we are looking for volunteers to help with our school board initiative, and we're in the middle of a membership drive for 2023, as our membership rates are going to be going up in 2024. If you become or renew your membership now, then we will give you some cool swag. We have magnetic bumper stickers and Secular AZ totes and even travel coffee mugs. But today, I am really excited because today we are going to be speaking with, and hold on just a minute, because of course, I have my bio here on another page. So we are actually going to be speaking with Maya Zuckerberg. After the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and about to get into her freshman year of high school, Maya heard the call for gun violence prevention and school safety and decided to become an advocate for change. During her 3 years as an organizer for March for Our Lives Arizona, she worked to grow their presence as a city lead and as political co-director. She assisted in creating the School Safety Taskforce in partnership with the Superintendent of Public Instruction's office, and studied data-driven solutions to gun violence at the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research Summer Youth Institute on reducing gun violence in America. She has served as the president of Arizonans for Gun Safety and Arizona Gun Safety Action Fund since 2022, and is dedicated to the fight for a safer Arizona. So welcome, Maya. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And I have to ask this question. I mean, I'm assuming, right, that the Superintendent of Public Instruction was probably the former superintendent.
Yes, it was. And thank you for having me here. I'm really glad to be speaking with you today and sharing some information about gun violence prevention efforts in Arizona.
Well, we're happy to have you. And again, I am so grateful to the work that you're doing. And so let's just jump right in, because especially this week, unfortunately, it's yet another timely discussion about gun violence in America. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Maya.
Okay, thank you. And like you said, this isn't how I plan to be starting this conversation, but like you said, this has been a really tragic week with all of the news going on from Lewiston and the horrors that are happening there. So I just wanted to take a second to remember them and honor. We aim at Arizonans for Gun Safety to honor all victims of gun violence and their memory through action and through stopping the next tragedy from happening. So that is the work we aim to do every day. And then I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation if I can figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. Jeannie, do you know how I can share my screen?
Oh yeah, okay. If you're on your laptop, there should be a little green button in the center down there. And I have a Windows PC, so I don't know if it's different for Macs, but there should just be a little green share screen, and you click that. When you click it, then it'll ask you which one of your screens you want to share. It'll like show you pictures.
Okay, let's see.
You have that?
I'm not seeing a share button.
Oh, okay. Another thing that we could do is you could send it on, email it to Lindsay, and then Lindsay could go through the slides for you.
Okay, let's do that. I'm not sure why it's not letting me share. but
Yeah,
let's start.
the settings shouldn't be any different than normal. I can see that your grandmother's here, so that's fantastic. You must be very proud, Laura, of your granddaughter. Hi to Gary from Payson, former NRA member who's changed his mind on this and other issues. Well, welcome, Gary. And, I think I'm going to be coming to Payson in the coming weeks. I believe myself and our legal intern, Adriana, are going to be there. So if you want details of that, be sure to give us your email address and we can let you know when we're going to be up in Payson. But I think it's in the beginning of November. Don from Queen Creek, hello. Hi, Dave and Chandler. Jeff from Silver City. Is Silver City in New Mexico, Jeff? I'm guessing it is, since your handle is New Mexican Skies. Let's see. Mars is here, of course. Mars is everywhere. RJ is here saying thank you for hosting these important conversations. Yay, Matt's here too. Excellent. And I want to give a big, huge shout out. I don't think I see him on here, but Greg Jackson, Mars also, and let's see, it was Candace and Craig were our great volunteers at the oh, it says that you have to give you access. So make sure you give Lindsay access to the slideshow presentation that you have. But yeah, Greg Jackson, Candace and Craig, who are from Bisbee, they split their time between here and there. Mars was there all at the Pride Festival. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. right now. We are going to be in a panel discussion this weekend about the radical evangelical extremist takeover of school boards. Imagine that. So I'm very lucky to be here in DC with the Network for Public Education, which is Diane Ravitch's group. And also there's a bunch of us from Arizona to talk about education, because guess what? We are ground zero for bad ideas in public education and trying to privatize. So Gary is giving the email. Oh, good. Yay, we've got it up. So now, whenever you are ready, Maya, it's a good thing I've got the gift of gab because I can just vamp and vamp and vamp.
Oh, I
Go ahead and take
appreciate
it
it.
over. Now, the thing is with her, I know that with Lindsay's slideshow, I know that when she tries to put it full screen, that it won't work all the way. So unfortunately, folks, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that it's not in full, display mode. So go ahead, Maya, take it away.
I'll zoom in as far as I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. And sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm not the most techie person ever, so I appreciate your help. All right, so I am going to go over some of the gun laws we've been facing in Arizona through last session, and we expect to see again this coming session. There have been some really great bills that have been introduced that, of course, haven't moved much at all this session. But there's also been some really awful bills that we've been fighting hard against that would loosen our already very weak gun laws in Arizona. So I'll go ahead and go through some of them. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if you'd like to share your opinions or anything, feel free to unmute and discuss them. All right, Lindsay, you want to go to the next slide? Thank you. So a little bit about Arizonans for Gun Safety. We're a nonprofit organization. We have our 501c3 Arizonans for Gun Safety and our 501c4 Arizona Gun Safety Action Fund. They're both nonprofits. They're both nonpartisan. Our Arizonans for Gun Safety deals a little bit more with public education and outreach, where Arizona Gun Safety Action Fund does more of our legislative issues. And that's where we come from, more of an advocacy position. Arizonans for Gun Safety was founded in 1995 by Geraldine Hills, our former president, after her brother Adam was killed as an off-duty police officer by an AK-47. She founded Arizona Gun Safety Action Fund later to continue her mission through legislative avenues. Through the years, we've had many different presidents, survivors of gun violence who've been at the forefront of our organization, and our board of directors has aimed to highlight voices from all different perspectives and backgrounds. State Representative Jennifer Longden was previously our president after she was paralyzed due to a random drive-by shooting. Otis and Lori Smith joined the organization after their daughter Shannon was killed by a stray bullet fired into the air. And we then were able to help pass Shannon's law, making it a felony offense to shoot a firearm into the air. Arizonans for Gun Safety has also filed amicus briefs in litigation surrounding reasonable gun restrictions and promoted a gun buyback program which was unfortunately eventually ended up being ineffective due to the Arizona legislature's passing of a statute requiring cities or counties to resell instead of destroy guns they obtain. We also, as you can see by me being our president now, we really strive to highlight youth participation. I took over last year when I turned 18. We have done this through being the fiscal sponsor of March for Our Lives Arizona, and we've recently created the Arizonans for Gun Safety Youth Advisory Board. All right, so first let's go through some of the really horrible bills from 2023. Fortunately, all of these were either vetoed or did not make it through the legislative process. None of them are currently laws, but we're going to keep seeing these come up, and we're going to keep fighting them every year. Our first two bills were mirror bills that would prevent colleges from prohibiting someone with a concealed carry permit from possessing a firearm on campus. This bill was fought strongly against by the chief of police at ASU. It is a very dangerous concept. It would allow students to keep their gun in their dorm where other people might be able to access it, and overall just would be so dangerous if there was a shooting, and now we have people where there's good guys with guns and bad guys with guns and nobody knows who is doing what. So like in the case of Michigan State shooting, it would have just been incredibly dangerous. The next bill would prevent K through 12 schools from prohibiting a parent with a concealed weapons permit from carrying a firearm on school grounds. The senator who introduced this bill used the example of, if I'm carrying a gun in my purse and I have to go pick up my child from school, I shouldn't have to go home and put my gun away. Well, now you have your gun in your purse, you set it down on a table, and I think we all know where that's going to end up. This bill was introduced to teach firearm safety to students in grades 6 through 12, so as young as elementary school. And the bill was written with an impetus of using the NRA's Firearm Accident Prevention Program, or Eddie the Eagle program. Instead of having a program where it was focused around just don't touch it, if you see anything, make sure your parents know to store their gun safely, it was introduced by the NRA to use their program to highlight these issues. And while the original bill included the curriculum coming from educators, administrators, urban housing and safety officials, clinical psychologists, and law enforcement officials, it was later changed to just come from the NRA and firearm training officials with law enforcement. So there was an amendment introduced that we highly supported. It was Representative Jennifer Longden's amendment to require parents to opt their student in, where the original bill required them to be opted out. And it would change it to remove the NRA's program from it. And of course, that failed in the House Military Affairs and Public Safety Committee. This bill would add the refusal to enforce any federal taxes on firearms or ammunition to what we already have in place, which is called the Second Amendment Sanctuary Law. It was passed in 2021. It makes it so that the Arizona government can basically decide they don't want to enforce any federal laws that are passed in regards to guns. And then this just adds more to that, makes that even worse subject. This bill's pretty simple. It would repeal our ban on gun silencers. It's one of the very few accessories that we don't allow in Arizona, one of the few gun laws we do have on the books, and this would just loosen that. This bill would prohibit cities and towns from banning gun shows. Gun shows are so extremely dangerous. It basically allows private sales where background checks aren't required. So it's a huge loophole to any background check laws that are in place. There are some cities that have tried to prohibit them, which is why this bill came up. Tucson, I believe, has banned gun shows, and so this bill would basically reverse that. And then the last one that we really focused on last session would be a bill that would protect any firearm modification in Arizona. So this can be something simple like the sponsor was saying about, certain engravings or, accessories that you might put on it that are just really for aesthetics. It can also be accessories that could turn a handgun into a semi-automatic weapon. These accessories are so incredibly dangerous. There are accessories that can make guns into machine guns, basically. And so anything that, like that would be banned at a federal level would be accepted here because it was done here.
And I'd like to point out real quick that for those of you who don't know who Representative Diaz is, he is a pastor. I don't know what denomination, some type of fundamentalist Christian congregation, I believe, leads with that quite frequently, as do many people in our legislature. And I just think it's interesting right now because of our new Speaker of the House, who is, when the Lewiston shooting happened, basically said that we're broken, our hearts are broken, and that all we can do is ask for God to answer our prayers. And so I just wanted to point that out, that so many of these bills that you have been successful in blocking, Maya, are coming from people who say that they are good Christian people, but then, won't really. So not only are they promoting it, but they also won't allow for anything that could make the rest of us safer from an incident at a bowling alley or a school or a bar or our workplace. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, absolutely. And all of the repeals on the current gun laws that were in those bills, none of the laws that are in place in any way touch on the Second Amendment. They are all minor accessories, stuff like that no citizen needs. It's not like we're talking about really controversial issues here, but for some reason in Arizona they are. So thankfully we had Governor Hobbs, who was able to veto all of these terrible bills. But we're going to keep seeing them come up. We're going to keep testifying against them and fighting against them in every way that we can. And hopefully the governor will continue to veto them, as I'm sure she will. Now, fortunately, we had some really amazing bills introduced this session, too. Of course, did not get a lot of traction. None of them moved as very far at all, if they moved in any way. But they were all pretty much held up in committees. This is one of my favorite bills to talk about. It's called Christian's Law, and you might have heard that term before. It's named after a boy named Christian Patillo, who was 15, went to a sleepover at his friend's house, and was killed because of an unsecured gun. His parents have been fighting tirelessly in trying to effect change both here and in Congress with Ethan's Law, which is a similar bill. This is a very loose version of secure storage bills. So while a lot of secure storage bills require have a criminal component of them, which we also had introduced, we were mostly just fighting for a civil penalty to kind of prevent parents from having the idea that they could even leave their guns out and unsecured. And there's a video attached to that one that, Lindsay, are you able to play that? At the bottom, there's a little one. The link is to a documentary. No, go to the little clip that I have of it at the bottom instead of the link.
Okay, hang on one sec.
Yeah, so I included the link to the entire video. It's 17 minutes, so I don't want to, take up all of your time playing it, but I highly recommend you watch it. It's a very powerful video. Brave New Films created it, and it's all about people who have been affected by secure storage. The Patillos were a part of that, and it tells some of these kids' stories that weren't able to have a full life because of an unsecured weapon. So I highly recommend watching that. But I included just a short clip of some of the highlights of the video.
Hopefully she can get it to work. And either way, I would love.
I'm sorry. It only comes up with the full video, but I can put that into the chat so that people can watch that if they would, if
Okay.
you'd like. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it, because I would like to watch it for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really powerful video. Like I said, it shows some of those stories, and then it also shows some of the laws we've been able to pass across the country. It talks about Christian's Law being introduced here and the committee chair's refusal to hear that bill. Um, and it's really powerful. I highly recommend watching it. Um, I think it's hard to argue against a secure storage bill when you hear some of these parents talk about the grief that they've experienced. And then the next bill is another version of a secure storage bill, which would make it a class 1 misdemeanor to fail to secure your firearm. And here's an even stronger version of the bill, which would make it a class 6 felony in the case of a minor injury, or a class 4 felony if your unsecured firearm results in serious injury or death. So we strongly support all of these bills, but Christian's Law is the main one we are arguing for now, because we believe it's a really just common sense law that everybody should be able to support. This bill would require the courts to ask if someone convicted of a felony, which would prohibit them from owning a gun, have a concealed carry permit, and if so, it would require the person to surrender the concealed carry permit at the time of sentencing. Seems like something that should probably already be in statute, and unfortunately is not. The reason this is so important is because where background checks are required, they are bypassed by having a concealed carry permit. So while you can't get a concealed carry permit if you have a felony on your record, if you commit one after you have it, there's no system for surrendering that. This bill is really simple and seemed to have some bipartisan support. It would make safe storage devices tax-free. Everyone loves a tax break. It was scheduled for a committee hearing and then pulled by the agenda at the last minute, unfortunately.
I recall that there was, I don't remember what games were being played in the legislature at that time, but I remember that week of the legislature where suddenly all these bills that were scheduled for a committee hearing just vanished off of the docket, off of the agendas of all these committees. And it was because of some kind of temper tantrum. And again, I don't remember what the topic was, but they were so mad because there was also, bills that would have mandated that clergy report any kind of sexual abuse. There was one about making sure that private school employees would have to have background checks, and all of those smart sense gun control measures too. So it's crazy how it works down there, how the rules seem to bend and change on a whim. So
Absolutely.
anyway.
The committee chairs have so much power to do basically anything they want. And this was a bill we were really hopeful about because it just had so much bipartisan support. It's such a common sense thing, and it would legitimately make gun violence, it's a legitimate effort for gun violence prevention in Arizona. Any
Yeah.
safe storage measures we can get passed are just a huge step.
I feel like at this point, I feel like we should mandate that people have to watch just maybe 2-3 hours of committee hearings at the Capitol, and then they will never not vote again. They will always know who their representatives are, right? They'll work to try to create change, because just watching 5 minutes of some of those committee hearings will turn your hair my color. It is very stressful, and it's very infuriating and very frustrating, especially on the back end when people like you, Maya, are doing that kind of hard work and shaking hands and doing all the things that you're supposed to do to get your lawmakers to listen to you. So again, I admire you for your stick-to-itiveness, and I'll stop butting in.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And, thankfully we have some really great advocates at Arizonans for gun safety who are great at going down with me and testifying against these bills and putting up as much of a fight as we can. Obviously, we always need more support for any of our good bills and more push against any of the bad bills. But, you're right. If more people had to hear what their representative said, you're right, they would always vote. All right, and then this next bill is basically known as an extreme risk protection order or red flag law. This is especially relevant right now because of what just happened in Lewiston. we knew the shooter there had mental health issues. He had been committed. This bill would have taken his guns away from him until he had due process. These bills are incredibly just. They are given hearings typically the same day as their guns are removed from their home. It has to be reported by someone who has knowledge of the situation, but it's an incredibly safe measure. It's one of the most effective gun violence prevention measures we could put in place. And in this situation, it might have prevented what happened. This bill was introduced by Representative Laura Tarrick. It would basically just exempt school blueprints from public records so that a shooter couldn't go online and find the blueprints of a school and lay out a plan to go and commit a tragedy. Really common sense thing. It got through committee hearings and it got held up before a third read, which was really unfortunate. This bill would have particularly helped in the Nashville shooting at Covenant High School. The shooter there had blueprints. If they hadn't, maybe they wouldn't have been able to hurt as many people as they did. This bill would require healthcare providers working in pediatrics to just provide information about gun safety. It would also require the Department of Health Services to develop a pamphlet on gun safety that can be provided to those healthcare. So there's really not much a healthcare provider even has to do there. Just have that pamphlet available and treat it like any other issue that they would when a parent comes in with a newborn, just like car seats and stuff like that, that are huge safety tools. This bill would prohibit firearm possession by those convicted of domestic violence or with an order of protection against them. Pretty common sense measure to me. This bill would require a 3-day waiting period on purchasing a firearm. So if someone's in crisis, they can't just go and get a firearm before they have a chance to think through what they're going to do. This bill would close background check loopholes related to private dealers and gun shows. So I mentioned gun shows earlier with the bad bill from Senator Wadsack. The towns that are trying to ban them, it needs to be banned at a level here in Arizona and federally. They are just so incredibly dangerous and a really awful loophole to a good concept of background checks. This bill would require firearm dealers to verify the validity of a concealed carry permit. Like I said, concealed carry permits exempt someone from a background check. It would be very easy to do this, to just verify it's valid and they don't have a felony which would revoke it or anything like that. It's another concept to the bill I mentioned earlier. This bill would just raise the age to open carry a firearm to 21, exempting those in the military. This bill would require charter schools to develop emergency response plans for school sites with input from students, parents, teachers, school employees, anybody that it really affects. Emergency response plans are just common sense. This has nothing to do with guns, really. It's just when something happens, let's have a plan for it. And unfortunately, this bill didn't move much at all. And then our last bill would require post-secondary institutions to implement something called Arizona School Mental Health Professionals Academy, which would just incentivize students working in the School of Psychology to go into professions of a school psychologist, social worker, or counselor. Arizona is one of the worst states in the country when it comes to the counselor to student ratio. And this would give students scholarships if they went into that profession and committed to working in Arizona public schools. And now that you have heard about all of the possibilities with the great bills we could get done here and all the really terrible bills, I highly encourage you, if you don't already, to find out who your legislator is. And when these bills come up, contact them, call your legislators, sign up for requests to speak, and come testify with us at the Capitol if you're able to. All right, does anybody have any questions about any of that? Any comments about any of those bills?
Let's see, I'm going to go back and just
On
read.
that last,
I can read some of these comments. Let's see. Let's see. I saw some up here. Moms Demand Action stands with you to support Christians law. That comes from RJ Shannon. Thank you for that. We would hope that the House, meaning the National House of Representatives, will be talking about gun violence today. But Speaker Mike Johnson says we just need to pray more, of course, because that's worked so well. Let's see. J. Gary Nelson says, well, I have to admit, I felt inspired to pray for protection from people like Mike Johnson. Boy, ain't that the truth? Any speaker who is supportive of Ken Ham is not one I want to hear speak. If prayer worked, we wouldn't be in this situation. We got some shout outs for Representative Laura Tarrick for just being awesome, basically. Somebody dropped a link in there of Stephen Colbert's response to Mike Johnson's, hopeful and prayerful nonsense. Let's see. Here's another one. Kathleen says, don't forget that the ATF is trying to close the gun show loophole. Go to every town for gun safety to comment on that change. So if you can drop that link, Kathleen, that would be great. RJ says gun violence is the number 2 cause of death for children in Arizona and the number one cause of death for children nationally. And if that doesn't inspire a nation to want to create meaningful legislation to change that, I fear nothing will. It's a primary public health issue that has only been recently recognized. And they say we are also working to ban assault weapons. Now is the time. You can text 6443. Let's see. Maya, yes, Maya is amazing. I had no idea she was that young. She is terrific at testifying. Shout out to you, Maya.
thank you.
And then Lindsay dropped all the links that you had in your slideshow. So thank you for that, Lindsay. Laura Tarrick and Jen Longden are rock stars. Absolutely. Sandra says, thank you very much for your presentation. An inspiring young person. Brava. Indeed, the only hope that I walk around with these days is because of millennials and Gen Z, because my generation, Gen X, we've never cared enough about anything to do anything. And well, boomers, no offense to anybody here, but we know. Let's see. Michael is saying, would it make sense? Okay, here we're coming to a question. Would it make sense to start a citizens initiative to require universal background checks here in Arizona? Would that put pressure on the state legislature to pass gun control laws? Good question, Michael. What do you think, Maya?
So that is something that a lot of organizations here are doing, and that's kind of the angle we come at is we're your constituents. We want universal background checks. We have gun owners that come and testify periodically that want background checks. It's such a simple measure, and it's something that most gun owners support. So there have been petitions in the past to get that, to get those voices included. Like I said, come down to the Capitol and testify with us. Call your representative, say, I live in your district and this is what I want. This is why I voted for you. Unfortunately, with our current climate in the legislature, there's not much movement on these issues, but we're always hoping that there's something that we can do to push for issues like that.
And yeah, here as we get closer to the legislative session, we'll be likely pointing most of you to civic engagement beyond voting, just because they are kind of the go-to when it comes to how to civically engage beyond just your vote. And so they have RTS trainings. They have trainings and examples all the time about how you can share your story. They'll even make it so that, let's say you don't really want to go down to the Capitol, maybe you're immunocompromised. They will make it so that they will set up your account for you, and then you can just type in your response to some of these bills. So be sure to be paying attention as we get closer to this next legislative session, which I can't believe is already around the corner. We'll have all kinds of resources for you to be able to get more engaged. Now, here's a really good question from Emily about possible legislation. She's asking, is there anything about less extreme lockdown drills in schools? Because data shows that they disturb kids, but schools still do them. So do you know if there's any discussion about changing how we do some of these lockdowns, or maybe even how many we do? I know when I was teaching, the majority of them were actually because we had active shooters in the neighborhood, which made it even more stressful. You know, as a teacher, I kind of would get the inside that hey, this week there's probably going to be a lockdown drill. And even though I wasn't allowed to tell the kids, you know, and maybe that's a simple change. Let's tell the kids this is just pretend for right now. However, if it is ever real, we'll have to, you know, let's practice like we play kind of thing. So do you know if there's any bills in the chute maybe that would change how we do lockdown drills in schools and public places?
Yeah, so last session there was not one that was introduced. It's definitely been a discussion at the Capitol. It's something that I'd like to see introduced. It's something that Superintendent Kathy Hoffman's office worked on a lot until she was unfortunately voted out of office. And a lot of that direction does come from the superintendent's office. So I don't know that we're going to see a ton of change with the current occupant. Uh, but I definitely think it's an important issue that there's so many angles that we could tackle it on. When I first started high school, my high school had 3 shooting threats in 2 weeks. And that is not uncommon, unfortunately. I went to a high school in a pretty nice area, one of the best high schools, public high schools in the state. And this was happening there. It's happening everywhere. And the lockdown drills are difficult. I remember sitting in my biology class, and our teacher was telling us how if we sit behind certain cubbies, we're less likely to die if we get shot through them. This is a reality that students at elementary school age are facing. So there's definitely changes that need to be made to our lockdown drill system.
Mhm.
Um, but students know they're coming, know to prepare for them. Parents can have more open conversations with their students about them. There's a lot of different things that we can do there that I would like to see at the legislature.
Yeah. One time when I was teaching at a Title I school in Maryvale, it was middle school, and the announcement came over the loudspeaker during lunch. You know, I think we had one, 2 or 3, I mean, we had 2 or 3 different sections of lunch, you know, that kind of rotated in and out of the cafeteria. And it was during like one, you know, a group of kids was coming in from recess to go to their classes, and another group was coming out of their classes to come to lunch. And it was real, you know, like it wasn't that there was somebody necessarily targeting the school, but there was an armed gunman in the neighborhood. And so that was terrifying. And, you know, and because these middle schoolers were like so desensitized, I feel like, because that happened so frequently, it was very difficult to get it into their heads, like, hey guys, no, I know that this isn't how we usually, you know, we had to put them all on the stage in the multipurpose room and try to keep like 100 students on the stage quiet. It was awful. I mean, it's traumatizing for the kids, for the teachers, for the parents of the kids and the teachers, for the brothers and sisters. I mean, it's really terrible. And you know,
Absolutely.
speaking of the current occupant of the superintendent's office, I just heard him say this morning that because here's the thing, he wants to put cops in all the schools, right? And of course, we've never had an incident where a police officer has kept a school safe, but for whatever reason, they want to have cops on campus. And because there aren't enough, like, there's not enough police officers to go around, generally speaking, much less SROs. So he now wants to have a rotating schedule of police officers on school campuses. So a school could potentially have 5 different officers on a campus, meaning they don't have any relationships with the kids. You know, it's just mind-boggling how we went from somebody who really understands the importance of social emotional well-being to somebody whose only solution seems to be putting armed guards at every school.
Absolutely. And that's why, there are so many different changes that need to be made when it comes to how school resource officers are utilized in schools. The middle school I went to liked to use them just as a scare tactic for kids that were acting out, as a system of punishment for children. They're highly misused in schools. And like Matt said, in situations like Uvalde and Parkland, unfortunately, they just don't always do the one thing that they really are there to do and stop these horrible instances. So there's so many changes that need to be done there. It's something that part of the task force I was on with Kathy Hoffman's office was working on, is giving schools the option between a counselor and an SRO so that they can decide if they want to have, a counselor to try to prevent these instances. It's part of why the school mental health academy is so important, to get more counselors into schools and kind of um, make sure that schools, if they want an SRO, they have them, and if not, let them have a school counselor where we can really prevent things from happening before they happen. And it's part of why the youth voice is so important in this conversation, and why one of the first things I did when I became president of Arizonans for Gun Safety was start our youth advisory board. So if you know of any young people who are looking to get involved, they do have a voice in this conversation. I started this when I was 13. I was still in middle school when I first got involved with March for Our Lives, so there is definitely a place for young people who want to affect change to the things that are directly impacting them.
Well, I'm certainly grateful for your activism, especially at such a young age. It is so impressive. Let's see. Ian saw a meme this morning of a large empty U-Haul truck backing up with the caption, "First delivery of thoughts and prayers, just arriving in Maine." That's pretty accurate. Matt says they don't care for gun safety because if a child is killed, then it's just God's will. Unfortunately, I mean, the speaker's comments seem to indicate that, right? Again, more people are giving you tons of shout outs, Maya. Julie's grateful for all the links that she says she'll be passing those out widely to encourage action. And then RJ says school shootings are actually a small percentage of all shootings. We stress our youth with lockdowns. Unfortunately, we miss the issue regarding how many youth face the threats of gun violence off campus, and there is not enough discussion regarding those threats and acts of violence. And again, that's such a great point too, RJ, because these are the same folks who are against comprehensive sex ed. And they spin together this narrative that comprehensive sex ed is all of us teaching their kids how to be sexual, and no, that's not what's happening. It's about teachers teaching these kids about their own sexuality and how to handle the changes in their body, and even things like healthy relationships and what partner abuse looks like. When I taught high school, I saw very many young people, mostly young girls, young women, who were involved in unhealthy relationships. And again, many of these families, there's a gun in one of their homes, and so why don't we want to educate our young people about healthy relationships, and why do we want to protect domestic violence abusers? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I agree. We need more training on how to stay safe in the home. Absolutely, RJ, but also like to look for those signs and what that could potentially mean, because so many of these people who choose to shoot up schools or places of work or bowling alleys or whatever, so often we find out that many of them have had prior convictions of domestic violence. And so making it easier for them makes no sense. And I hope I don't put you on the spot here, Maya, but I do have a question, because I believe there was something going to the Supreme Court recently, and maybe it's already been there, about domestic violence perpetrators, people who have served their time and being able to get guns. Do you know anything about that?
I've heard about it. There is a case going there about, preventing people with domestic violence from owning guns. I don't know a ton about it, to be honest. We really focus on Arizona specific issues and not federal issues, but there are a lot of other GVP orgs that are working on that. It's something we've worked on a little bit in the past with different issues going to the Supreme Court, but right now, because there's so much going on in the state legislature, that's really where our focus has been.
Good. And I appreciate you being focused locally, because, I don't even have the bandwidth to stay afloat of what's going on nationally, much less internationally, because there's so much always going on here. So you go ahead and stay local, because that is where we need you.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of GVP organizations that are active in Arizona. So we really focus on making sure that Arizona is still represented because there are things we can get done here, even with the current climate.
Right. Don says it's not the extremists. It's not that they don't care about kids. It's that they care more about their ideology than the kids. This is one of the biggest markers for a dangerous cult. I agree. RJ says, I think that Republicans, remember, we're a non-partisan organization, so I just try to refer to most of them as evangelical extremists because they usually lead by saying, I'm a man of God or a woman of God or a woman of Christ or whatever. So I think that these extremists care more about the money to be made with gun manufacturing and distribution, which is international, and to follow the money. Of course, since the shooting that just happened, there was a big thread on Twitter or Blue Sky about where the money comes from. There was also a really good graphic about how, and I didn't even know about this really, which I'm sure you all do, but it was Bill Clinton who put a ban on assault weapons, and then it was George W. Bush that lifted that ban, or under his presidency, the ban was lifted. And then they had this really amazing graphic with like basically the explosion of shootings that have happened since that ban was lifted back in the 2000s, whenever it was. Yeah. Matt says, if you're going to use armed guards, I know a ton of vets that would love the job. Leave them there for only that purpose. Let them develop relationships with student and staff and not as a threat to misbehaving kids. You know what, Matt? I actually love that. And, I think that there's a lot of people that should, that maybe some people would be upset around being around kids, but I actually think that there are some really great adults out there who have been through some things that would be really good examples to keep our kids from going through the same things that they went through. Let's see. Yes, Maya, you're just getting all the love. Maya is amazing.
Thank you all. I appreciate you all having me here.
Too many kids don't get healthy love at home, so they don't know how to demand it from a partner. It's sad. Thank you for saying this, Jeannie. A young woman was murdered / shot by her partner in front of her children in Gilbert on Wednesday. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's horrible. Rahimi, November 7th. I'm not sure what that means. Oh boy, RJ says there was also a murder-suicide in Peoria. And Lindsay says the data shows an almost immediate and steep rise in mass shooting deaths the years after the assault weapons ban expired in 2004. Yeah, if you're interested, she put a link up there. It's stunning. Like, and the most stunning thing about it isn't how, of course, the number of mass shootings, murders, the gun violence increased. What's stunning is that we still are not doing anything about it. Like, we're just saying, well, thoughts and prayers. This is because of trans kids, or this is because of single parent homes, or this is because we don't pray in schools. None of that is true. It's the guns. And for them to be able to say all those other things with a straight face is enough to make me go crazy. And yes, Rahimi is the SCOTUS case, the domestic violence guns one. And yes, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
And real quick, to address what RJ said about the murder-suicide in Peoria, it was absolutely tragic. I happen to have a connection to people that know them. It was a terrible situation. There was a history of mental health and developmental health with the 19-year-old that committed the atrocity. The father had an unsecured gun in his nightstand. The 19-year-old went, shot the father, and then went to his car and shot himself. There was a history of threats. It was just a truly terrible situation. And unfortunately, because there was an unsecured gun, it escalated so drastically. And this is why it's so important to enact safe storage and to be diligent if you know somebody with young children that, if they are going to a sleepover or if their parents have a gun in the home. It's so important to make sure that your child isn't around an unsecured gun, because there's just so many ways that can end up with a horrible, horrible atrocity.
And I mean, I always think of it from an educational point of view. My background is in an education. I was a school board member. I care deeply about public schools. And I just think about how, we have so many opportunities here. The smart pledge You know what I'm talking about, where schools can adopt this pledge, right? Where they give every single kid a little, checklist to the parents so that they can make sure that they're storing their guns safely. And it's such an easy thing to do. And for people to be smart, thank you, the Be Smart pledge, for people to reject that, to reject that kind of knowledge, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Absolutely, and that's why the bill to have pediatricians hand that out to parents. That way, it's going directly to the parent. Um, it's just informational. It's just this is what can happen. Just be safe about this. Be smart, and it hands it directly to parents who might have a gun in the home.
And it also makes me worried again, and I'm going to circle back to education because that's what I do, but it concerns me that anybody could start their own micro school and start getting, tax money from folks who don't want their kids in public schools. And I could open up a micro school. I don't have to tell the parents whether I have guns in the house or not. I don't have to tell the parents, I don't have to have my chemicals secured underneath the sink. I don't have to have the pool with a gate around it. And I don't have to disclose whether I have guns, and they don't have to be safely put away. So I would really advise people to stay away from those kinds of situations too. So because these conversations, Maya, are often depressing, and it's a Friday and everybody's thinking about like, how can I maybe just release all of the weight of the world and maybe actually enjoy my weekend? What is it, especially in the work that you do, what is it that gives you hope, that keeps you going all the time?
Looking around the country, there is so much change that's happening. Even in states that are more conservative, that aren't typically passing a lot of these laws, there's change. There is always room for change. There's always room for agreement and civil dialogue. And I've had great conversations with people who don't agree with me on most issues, but maybe there's one or two issues that we can find something on. And if that saves one life, then it makes every minute of work that I do worth it. It's hard, it's draining. And I know it's hard to hear these stories, but it's so important to elevate the stories of people that have been affected by this, to put survivors at the forefront and let them share their stories. Like I said, I highly recommend watching that video. It's hard to get through the beginning, but if you watch until the end, it talks about the change that has happened in other states. And it talks about the pushback that we've seen in Arizona with Christians law. It shows that change can happen. We're seeing it everywhere. There is room for it here in Arizona, and I do believe one day we will be a safer state than we currently are.
Well, you just being who you are and starting this work at such a young age as you did gives me hope, and your generation gives me hope. And the fact that you all are willing to just put yourselves out there and know you probably have a deeper understanding of the legislative process in your state than probably 95% of the adults. And I don't even feel like that's an exaggeration. So thank you also for being engaged at that level at such a young age. May I ask, what are you? Oh, your grandma's proud of you. Um, so what are you majoring in? Like, what do you hope to, I hate to say, what do you want to be when you grow up, but what do you want to do? What do you hope to accomplish?
I'd like to work in public policy. That is my goal, to work, in Congress with the people that are making change to affect public policy.
Okay. Well, we're gonna try to get a meeting with Congressman Ruben Gallegos. So I'll be sure to pass along your contact information with him in case he's got a spot for you in the
Thank
coming session.
Well, thank you all for having me here, for elevating this issue, for paying attention to it. It's such a critical issue. It affects children so drastically. It's one of the leading causes of death for children. And I really appreciate you guys elevating this issue. Like I said, I shared some information in the slides. I think that Lindsay shared it in the comments as well, the links to our social media. We're going to be having an advocacy day next year. Please join us. There's room for anybody, even if you've never gotten involved with the legislature. Come join us. come see what we do. Join us at committee hearings when there's one of these bills that you feel really passionate about. Follow us on social media, and my email was in there as well. It's info@azgunsafety.org. If you have, any issues you'd like us to work on, that you care about, that you want to get involved with us, feel free to reach out anytime.
Awesome. Well, who wouldn't want to get involved with somebody as passionate as Maya? Thanks again, Maya. I appreciate you at every level. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Appreciate the work that you do and everything that you're going to continue to do for the betterment of your community. So thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Next week, we will be talking to 2 doctors about their activism and doctors in emergency rooms who have seen things. And I read something today actually about the body count, unfortunately, in Lewiston was a lot. Well, it was more than what actually was. And a trauma physician came in and said, it's because of what these weapons do to people's bodies that they couldn't tell. They're so torn apart. And so hopefully within our lifetimes, we will have an assault weapons ban here in the United States. But thanks again, Maya. Thanks everybody else. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and y'all better sign up to get active with this organization because they are amazing. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.